Beanie Talks. I'm kidding. I can't keep that up. It's Beanie Talks. Hey guys, I'm Rachel, and today we're continuing or closing our series, The You Effect. So I want to just jump right in and let's go. So we've talked about the effect we have on others, the effect of community, but what do we do when we feel like we've lost our influence, or what do we do when we've made mistakes? So before I say anything, let's jump right into scripture to have something to start with. So we're going to be reading in Luke chapter 7, starting in verse 36. When one of the Pharisees invited Jesus to have dinner with him, he went to the Pharisee's house. There's construction, I'm sorry. And reclined at the table. That woman in that town who lived a sinful life learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house. So she came there with an alabaster jar of perfume. And as she stood behind him at the table, she was weeping, and her tears began to wet his feet. Then she wiped them with her hair and kissed them and poured perfume on them. When the Pharisees who had invited saw this, he said to himself, "If this man were a prophet, he would know who was touching him and what kind of woman she is, that she is a sinner." Then he turned towards the woman and said to Simon, the Pharisee, "Do you see this woman? I came into your house. You didn't give me any water for my feet, but she wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You do not give me a kiss, but this woman from the time I entered has not stopped kissing my feet. You did not put oil on my head, but she poured perfume on my feet. Therefore, I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven, as her great love has shown. But whoever has been forgiven little, loves little." Then Jesus said to her, "Your sins are forgiven." Okay, so there is a lot going on here in Luke 7, but to give just a little context, up to this point of Jesus's ministry, he had been preaching and interacting with people, and people were being healed. And earlier, even in this chapter, like a little boy was raised from the dead, which is crazy. So that was catching the attention of the religious people of the day. They're like, "Who's this guy? Why is he doing all this thing?" So naturally, they invited him over to dinner to figure it out. And the Pharisees, they're pretty confident that they had a positive influence. They thought they had a great effect on others. They were confident, and so much so they almost looked down on other people who had less of an influence or on the right track. So in the middle of this dinner party, then this woman shows up. I don't know about you, but even if I'm invited to a dinner party, I like look at my phone and I double and I triple check to make sure I'm in the right place. So big moves for this lady. So other than that, there are some cultural things that we might miss out on. First off, first century Roman Israel area, because Israel was in control by Rome at this time. Culturally, women not viewed as equal, especially in the Roman Empire. Oh my gosh, like they were hardly viewed more as possessions that were able to make babies, which is so sad because definitely not how Jesus intended or God intended women to be looked at. So first of all, her showing up to the dinner party like this, socially unacceptable. So then it makes the situation even more awkward that this woman had a reputation, a negative one that is. So the passage doesn't specify what it was, but the biblical scholars and other homies that sit around and talk about what context is, they think that because the religious guys at that table had such an adverse effect, who were just so proactively and over the top trying to avoid sin, and the way they reacted, they think she was probably a prostitute. So they were trying to uphold their rules and live perfect, so they really could not have any association, any interaction with this woman. So essentially, the Pharisee Simon that had Jesus over for dinner was expecting Jesus to be like, "Hey, no, go away, woman." And what kind of threw a wrench into the whole situation is this was the kind of people Jesus was drawn to and the kind of people he interacted with. Like, he saw the ones that did not have cultural value or influence, or people who were sinners, and he did life with them. And so then, sorry, I have dogs. So in verse 37, she washes Jesus's feet with her tears and her hair and perfume. Okay, that's kind of weird pedicure not going on here. So first thing we want to pick up at first glance as Western readers is feet washing. I don't know how you guys feel about feet. I don't want to know how you feel about feet and or washing or handling them. But it seems strange that, like, how is this going on? I thought Jesus was eating dinner. Now this woman's washing Jesus's feet. And we picture like Western dining table with chairs. But really, one thing that really kind of helped me picture what was going on here was there was this table and people would like lean up against it like this and like lean their feet out that way. And so Jesus's feet were accessible. So, I mean, she was already busting in. But that kind of helps me picture where she was at. So with that picture in her mind, she is crying and wiping Jesus's feet with her hair, which is crazy. Another cultural thing. Woman's hair wasn't an out thing. It wasn't a thing they got to parade around like we do today. It was something that was away because it was seen as like a very like intimate part. It was covered, and it really only was shown when she was in private or when she was with a woman was with her husband. So one, this woman. Two, this woman's washing Jesus's feet and wiping it with her hair. So the Pharisees thought this was ridiculous and were wondering, like, Jesus, like, why are you letting this happen? Who are you? And on top of all of that, it's kind of surprising Jesus's feet hadn't been washed at this point at the dinner table, because, I mean, back then, all the dusty roads, and their Birkenstocks, you know, they didn't have Birkenstocks, but it was a hospitality thing. If Jesus was invited over, if he was a guest, they should have offered to wash his feet. It was like a sanitary thing. It was a sign of hospitality. And Jesus even then goes to list some other hospitality things that he didn't receive. He like, we couldn't get like their handshake, like a kiss or an oil, which was another sign of hospitality. Ooh, squeaky chair. At this point, they're just like, Jesus, what's going on? And their response, Jesus's response to the Pharisee was, do you see this woman? I came in your house. You didn't give me any water to wash my feet, etc., etc. But then he goes further to acknowledge, like, what had she done past that. And he kind of explains it in this way. Therefore, I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven as her great love has shown. So she wasn't doing this thing to be forgiven by Jesus, but it was out of gratitude for what Jesus has done, and Jesus was uplifting her. Then he says to Simon, the religious guy that was confused by this whole situation, whoever has been forgiven little loves little. And then Jesus does one last further crazy thing. He looks to her, the woman washing his feet, and says, your sins are forgiven, which was signaling to all the religious guys at that table that either he was a hypocrite or he actually was the Son of God. So crazy things going on here. It's more than just like a foot washing at a dinner party to what we see. So simply put, that the forgiveness that this woman receives, despite her reputation, despite who she was socially, culturally, Jesus saw the intrinsic value in her of beauty and life and potential of influence, and gave her a second chance through forgiveness. I think it's such a simple part of the gospel. We often forget how beautiful forgiveness is. Like, forgiveness isn't just this one-time thing and I'm going to heaven, but it's throughout all the mistakes we make and all the things we struggle with. We have second chances to move forward. We have second chances to live life and live life to the full and live life with a positive effect instead of stuck and bogged down by the things that want to hold us back. So no matter what we've thought we've done or what has disqualified us from having influences, because of the forgiveness that we have experienced and are given through Jesus, we have an opportunity in turn to take and make different steps because of this forgiveness. And forgiveness, something we can't take lightly. And so some practical steps to respond to forgiveness is to, one, reflect on our lives, the decisions that have led us to not have a positive effect or good influences or infect us negatively, and just be like real and honest and raw with ourselves, raw with God, and then in turn say, I confess, like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to live this way anymore, or these actions. And then after that, like, sometimes confessing alone isn't enough. Like, sometimes we need people to walk with us. I know I've needed people to walk with me in my past, and that's why we show up every week. We have small groups, and we have your small group leaders that want to walk with you. And so if you want that, or if you want prayer, we are here for you guys. And then thirdly, moving on from this, we can practically, now that we're free in forgiveness, able to pick a step and move forward. And you know, it's not perfect, and we're not perfect every day. It's the chance to move forward now that we have forgiveness and this positive change and this positive effect. And that's, I think, the simple, beautiful beauty of following Jesus, is that he doesn't expect us to come cleaned up and perfect and ready, but he wants us to come just as we are, messy, made mistakes, and he wants to get to know us, and he wants to give us the chance to move on and follow him and see what it means to live a life of a positive effect. So I think it's so cool, guys. Like, I know in my past I've made mistakes, and I'm gonna make mistakes in the future. So I think growing closer to God means knowing that you can bring those mistakes to him faster, so that you in turn don't have to stay there and you don't have to stay stuck. Because like, no matter what we've done, like, there's beautiful and incredible potential that Jesus sees in all of us to have a positive effect and a positive influence. And so this silly, to us, dinner party story is such a beautiful picture of us, that we have forgiveness that doesn't make sense. And what are we doing with that forgiveness that is so radical? And are we taking it for granted, or are we letting ourselves have that opportunity to follow after Jesus and take those positive steps to that then in turn have an effect on others? And then as we become more like Jesus, we're able to remind people, even like in the way Jesus did to this woman, that they have potential and they have beauty and they have so much in them, despite the things that they've done or the ways they feel stuck or the things that have happened to them. So the you effect, Jesus has a really big effect on us, so that we in turn can share and invite people into this abundant and free life that we are able to have. So yeah, I don't think that's something we should take lightly. And so that was this beanie talk. I hope that you were able to learn something about forgiveness, or even a little something more about this story that you may have never heard before. Thanks for tuning in, and I really hope I can see you next Wednesday at E-Youth. Also, do you like my salt and straw beanie? Best ice cream place. If you've never been there, we gotta go. It's the best. All right, bye guys. No.
Keeping it moving. What are we doing if we ain't moving?